I'm Rob.
I'm John.
And this is the Mint One Podcast,
where we talk all things NFTs and the rise of blockchain gaming.
So John, this week we have another special guest.
We do indeed. We have Steve Curran, the CEO of Burn Ghost Games. This episode of the Mint One Podcast is brought to you by Atomic Hub, who have partnered with Beast Kingdom, Subaru Productions and Redreamer to bring the iconic Japanese superhero Ultraman to the Wax blockchain on March the 1st. With another major collectibles brand bringing digital NFTs to the Wax blockchain, this is a huge moment for the Wax community and Ultraman fans around the world. If you'd like a chance at getting 10% off your Ultraman NFT purchase on March the 1st, click the link in the description below.
Okay, hello Steve. Thank you very much for joining us. I think we should start where we always start, which is perhaps you could introduce who you are and what you do.
Sure, and thanks for having me. My name is Steve Curran. I'm the CEO of Burn Ghost Games. Burn Ghost Games is a platform where people pay to play games of skill to win desirable NFTs, digital rewards, and other prizes. My background is over 30 years in the video game business. I started back in the 8-bit Nintendo days. Was with a company that did all the versions of every TV game show from 1989 to 1995 and beyond. But my time there was through 1995, at which point I left and got really excited about the internet, started a studio that was focused on, creating marketing and viral campaigns, entertainment-based marketing campaigns for every digital medium, and spent many years working with entertainment brands and consumer brands, developing games and viral content, and then sold that company a few years ago and really kind of jumped feet first into immersive media, and that's what led me to founding Burn Ghost. One of my former clients was the head of game design at the Game Show Network. And about 2 years ago, we started brainstorming on ideas, and that's where we landed on the idea of Burn Ghost as, how can we take all this experience in developing games, viral content, game portals, and apply it to this new emerging media and take advantage of all the benefits that being on the blockchain has to offer.
Cool. And if viewers, listeners, whichever platform you're accessing this podcast from, if you head to your website, which is burnghost.com, you are met with a very, let's just say an experience you won't find anywhere else. Let's put it that way. I think those of you that are listening just need to go and experience it for yourself. But it's cool, it's intriguing, but doesn't tell me all too much about what it is you're building. So do you want to go into kind of a bit more detail about what the community can expect from Burn Ghost Games?
Sure. So, the idea behind Burn Ghost is that casual games obviously are one of the most popular categories of games in every medium, whether it's mobile, Facebook got us, a lot of the growth in Facebook early on was through the popularity of casual and social games. And, our concept is really looking at in Web3 what people are doing in the gaming space. There's in addition to the fun factor, a lot of what people are trying to do is be part of the community, be part of different tribes, acquire assets, win or earn benefits. And in our case, you're going to our website, you're reviewing different contests based on desirable prizing, picking a contest that you want to enter because you like that prize, and then playing a simple, fun. In our case, at least at launch, it'll be based on trivia games, and you get rewarded for being in first place. And then there's a variety of prizes for top tens. It depends on the competition, but really you're choosing what do I want to win, and then playing a game and benefiting from being either a fan of that different genre or being knowledgeable in a certain sector.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. I was visiting your Discord earlier today, and I think within your announcements you've shared a bit of a teaser of what the homepage might look like once it launches. And I saw in that video you had various projects that regular listeners to this podcast will be very aware of. Your Clone X, your
Invisible Friends.
Invisible Friends, yeah, a lot of the mutant tapes I've seen on there as well. And so you've combining that with these trivia aspect that you've mentioned. Will Web3 fans be rewarded for their knowledge of the industry? Are there particular projects that you're already speaking to in terms of partnerships? What can we expect once the game goes live?
There'll be a combination. In general, there'll be what we have behind us is IP and patents around a very powerful trivia engine. So one of the things I've learned and my partners have learned in decades of developing games, including trivia games, is that very quickly you can burn through a database of trivia questions, and it becomes quite it's challenging for a player because then they start to see repeats. It becomes less fun. In our case, we want it to be fair for everybody. So we don't want to give anybody an advantage for having played so much that they start to see repeats. So we have this trivia engine that can deliver millions of combinations of questions and answers at scale. And no two players will ever get the same questions and answers. It'd be extremely rare that any player would ever get the same combination of questions and answers. So that's kind of a unique IP that we have behind it. And so in general, you'll play a game that will cover just general knowledge, including things like knowledge of the crypto space or pop culture or history. But we also want to we're going to have different genres so that you can enter in competitions that are relevant to you. So if you're a fan of sports, there'll be competitions that are geared towards a specific sport, and we'll have prizing that's relevant to that, whether it's a top shot or, something specific for that category of trivia. And over time, we see that we'll be able to tailor competitions around specific prizes so that the trivia might be based on the history of that project or even the history of that community. So it really feels like when you're playing, you're being rewarded for your fandom. And that kind of matches our philosophy in general, which is, Burn Ghost is fandom rewarded. We want to be a platform for winning, and a platform for projects, IPs, brands to find and reward their most loyal and knowledgeable fans. And we think that solves a problem in Web3 and beyond, because if you think about things like, Taylor Swift fans being angry that they got shut out of tickets because it went to the highest bidder, or Springsteen fans were pretty pissed off this past year when tickets were going through for thousands of dollars, and it didn't matter if you've followed them around the country since 1975. You're a bit angry that your fandom went unnoticed. So we're creating ways that really empower and reward fans.
That's interesting. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you was based on blockchain technology for casual games like trivia and so on. My focus with blockchain has been gaming for the whole time I've been working in this industry. And I think the use case for NFTs in games like, World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, the AAA big ticket games, I think the case is strong. I know a lot of gamers will disagree with me, but or everyone on this call agrees with me, so that's enough here. There's a strong use case for it because you're sinking thousands of hours into it, and you can earn something rare, and there's obvious ways that blockchain can be used. How does casual gaming and blockchain fit? Is it just like the reward mechanisms that you discussed there?
I think it's the reward mechanisms, but also in our case, there's the idea that there's provable fairness. Like if you can look at the contract and see that the prize will be rewarded to the winner, but also the idea that you can look and see how the question sets are being pulled and delivered, so that there's not some sort of trickery happened in regards to like, oh, this guy's pretty good, so we're going to make it harder for him in particular or her in particular. The idea that provable fairness is one of the real advantages of being built on the blockchain. And we think that the demographic and the audience we're appealing to out of the chute will recognize that and actually look into that. So we think that beyond the pricing, there's also advantages in the delivery.
Okay, so Steve, you said that you have worked in gaming since all the way back to 8-bit. My dad was a computer programmer, so I kind of was indoctrinated into gaming back on the Atari and everything after it. So I've seen gaming evolve in many ways, and I think there's these pivotal moments that we've seen, particularly with, I think online gaming is probably the biggest for me. Online multiplayer certainly changed gaming, brought far more gamers into the fold. You can play with your friends at all times. I mean, LAN was just inconvenient. So it certainly improved on that. But I was wondering, Web3 looks to be the next tectonic shift in gaming, whether that's casual games, whether that's, the AAA games like Call of Duty, whatever. Are there any parallels you see between this shift and previous shifts?
Yeah, I think that when a new medium or a new venue for gaming comes along, I think it kind of starts with what's familiar and what's worked before and works inside out. I think then once you onboard new people and there becomes more exposure and familiarity, then you can start to introduce more complexity and variety. So I think right now you see this combination of kind of moonshot metaverses combined with, games that at first appearance remind me more of 16-bit type games. So it's this combination of I want to get in early because I think that's where gaming is going 3 or 4 years from now, as well as things that are, games that are popular because I think people gravitate towards things that they recognize as I understand this. I know how this works. So something that feels like a platformer or an RPG might have more immediate appeal. The other thing is I think that, you look at, just pulling a little bit farther back out, I've seen that this repetition of gaming and casual gaming in particular is, really important to onboard people into a new technology or a new medium. Like when the iPhone launched, I remember reading that it kind of caught them by surprise how popular gaming was and how quickly gaming emerged as the number one use case for the phone in terms of the popularity of apps downloaded. The same thing with Facebook. Facebook was kind of caught by surprise by how big social gaming was in, broadening from the college market to an older audience and different demographics through the appeal of social and casual games. So I think casual games and games in general seem like a really important Trojan horse to onboard a wide variety of new players. And so I think the same thing with blockchain. I think that gaming is serving to through the familiarity, the appeal. A lot of players will onboard through casual games and that might not have any understanding of the technology behind it. And I think that that's where gaming plays a very important role in blockchain.
Yeah, this is an area that John and I have spoken a lot about. So, particularly, mobile gaming and casual gaming by the mainstream AAA gamers are perhaps a little underappreciated, particularly given that mobile gaming represents more gamers than all other platforms combined, which is still wild to me. And I think so I wrote the article about your seed round in December or November, where you raised $3.1 million, which is obviously you're getting a lot of support for the project, which is brilliant. And one of the things I wrote in this article was, if you don't think casual games are important, even to mainstream AAA, the big ticket games, you're just wrong, because the onboarding is so important. And that's one of the areas that blockchains had a problem and gaming did have a problem. It was seen as this marginalized hobby, but now it's ubiquitous. And even my mum plays Facebook games and she wouldn't go near a computer for years. So I think it represents a good, it's where technology is starting to coalesce. But I wonder if you think that casual gaming, how does the technology in blockchain have to be finessed to integrate into casual gaming? Because how I see it is they're kind of at odds. Casual gaming is casual. You don't want your players to have to understand blockchain technology. You don't want it to be difficult to access or play the game. Whereas blockchain has suffered this huge problem with with onboarding, where it was too difficult. You had custodial wallets, you had to have your keys, and it was chaos, which people are trying to solve. But that sounds like a bigger problem. If you're making casual Web3 games, you have to make that onboarding even smoother. Is that something that Burn Ghost is tackling?
Well, I think that's a great point, and I think that's one of the reasons that at first we're starting focused on Web3 native players. So our focus on launch will be ETH prizes with ETH wallet connections.
Right.
Likely have other side chains available. Over time, we're going to be multi-chain and multi-wallet. But we think that over time, as we onboard like credit card payments and have rewards that appeal to people that are not necessarily firmly enmeshed in the space, that there's ways that they'll benefit from being on the blockchain without having to understand fully that how do I create a MetaMask wallet, or how do I sell this on OpenSea. I think that as long as they recognize that they're winning, the assets that they win are contained in a custodial wallet on our platform, that there's ways that we can help educate them on what they can do from there to take it elsewhere. So I think we look at ourselves as kind of this ideal Web 2.5 platform for new players to help understand the benefits of blockchain gaming.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to kind of describe what it is that your team is trying to build. We've already alluded to this several times in this podcast, and quite frankly, it's something we've discussed on the podcast before, but it probably bears discussing once again. We talk all the time about how gaming is so important for blockchain and Web3, and the amount of people it's attracted, and it's become kind of the crown for Web3 right now. But why are video games the biggest use case for blockchain and Web3, do you think?
I just think that the benefits are more tangible and understandable for at least a wider variety of players and users. When you talk about the benefits of DeFi, it might seem kind of abstract and non-tangible versus I have digital access to my accounts, so I don't understand why this is important to me. But if you're a gamer and you spent years grinding on some game, and the rewards that you've earned or the assets that you've purchased still kind of live in somebody else's control, the benefits of earning, owning, being able to take that elsewhere, interoperability, all the benefits that I think over time will prove really popular for a wider variety of gamers, not just more the casual side of gaming.
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer to that. And we of course, we've touched on the importance of casual gaming and kind of the ease of onboarding, which is something that you guys are also looking to kind of incorporate into Burn Ghost. But up until now, I think Web3 gaming, blockchain gaming, whatever you want to term it, has seen some kickback from, let's say, the more hardcore gaming audience. How important do you think it is that we start to attract those hardcore players? And how do you think we go about turning the tables and really getting them on side?
Well, certainly, I think initially there was some of the environmental concerns that I think the changes with Ethereum has addressed. And I think over time, as they see benefits happening in I think casual games could prove to be the use case that gets their attention of making it easier to understand the benefits of digital ownership and being able to take that anywhere you go. I think over time, like anything else, it becomes something that is more and more expected versus a leap of faith. It's like when geolocation was first released, at first people were kind of horrified of the idea of being tracked anywhere, but over time, as it works its way into what you're doing and you get proven the benefits of it, it's like becomes part of your life, right? You happily trade off, in some cases, things you're concerned about for tangible benefits that you get as a user.
Yeah, that's funny. I always think about the meme from God knows how many years ago where people are like, oh, I don't want them harvesting my data. And then they'll say, they'll speak to their Alexa and they'll be like, wiretap, what's the weather like tomorrow? Like you're tapping yourself these days. It's crazy.
This microphone that's on 24/7 is not a concern.
Yeah, exactly. Madness. So one thing I want to ask you about is FTX game, which is patently funny. And usually when people try and be funny, they miss the mark when it comes to that sort of thing. But it's genuinely funny. The cynic in me says it's a PR stunt, a successful one. What was the motivation behind it? And what's the reception been like from your perspective?
So that's I appreciate the feedback. And that was a leap of faith because there was genuine concern when I was first talking about the idea internally that if you miss your mark with this audience, it could fail miserably. And so like the developer that I had working on it, like kind of protested, like, dude, this is playing with fire. So originally the idea was like to do that game. We had started that game ahead of the FTX scandal, believe it or not. Like the original idea was, it was sort of in the middle of a downturn in the NFT market. And so we kind of wanted to address the elephant in the room and just kind of make fun and satirize the whole idea of the journey of a player, like, trying to find that rare NFT project that's going to moon. And so the original title of the game was When Moon. And the idea was you're on this journey of like finding the right NFT project and like figuring out when to bail before it crashes and burns. And so we already had the core mechanic, built. And then what happened is we were in stealth mode. We had been working with Decrypt on our funding announcement. And the day that our funding announcement was supposed to break was the day that the FTX scandal hit. So I got an email from the journalist behind the article saying like, I think we should punt this for a few weeks. It would be in your best interest to postpone this. And so, we thought about it and said, well, this story is not going to go away anytime soon. So what if we took this game that we had built and re-engineered it around some really funny viral memes that were happening about the FTX scandal. And it was just another attempt at addressing the elephant in the room and having some fun with it, recognizing that, people in this space are in it for the long haul. And if you've been in this space long enough, you've encountered situations, maybe not as bad as this, but some, similar situations. And if you're in the space, you're going to be here through the thick and thin of it, and you'll appreciate the humor in it. So certainly there was still a leap of faith that like, geez, I hope people find this funny. I went and did a screen capture of the commentary from people online. And I was very surprised that universally we got comments ranging from this is the best game in Web3 to, like influencers in the space retweeting it. And so we had only sent it to like a handful of influencers in the space and were pleasantly surprised by the response that it got.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it was.
I didn't. So for me, I was fortunate not to get I told you so from the developer that was hesitant to play with fire.
It's gone into his CV instead.
That's right. That's right.
It really is one of the most unique experiences in Web3, and I have to second what Rob said. It's one of the most enjoyable as well, and genuinely funny.
That's great. So. Thanks. I'll pass that on.
From your perspective, is that kind of thing a one-hit wonder? Is there a follow-up on the cards?
Yeah, I think that my background just previous to forming Burn Ghost was I had a studio for a long time that around 2000 through 2010 we really were in this groove of I didn't come from advertising. I came from games and I came from marketing, but I didn't really understand how paid media works. So we kind of stumbled early on this idea of instead of, in most cases, advertising is interrupting what you'd rather be doing. And so my philosophy with that studio was like, let's make the thing you'd rather be doing and make that the marketing message. And so we had some early successes around 2000 with viral marketing campaigns that broke through and got, in some cases upwards of like 15 to 20 million views with no media spend. And that attracted the attention of movie studios and television networks and consumer brands that came to us specifically like, hey, do that for us, which which is a very dangerous situation to be in, because in some cases it's like catching lightning in a bottle. But it did give us a really good track record and understanding of how to do that. And Jason Oda, our developer, I've worked with for a dozen or longer, maybe 15, 16 years developing those kinds of campaigns. So, we see a lane of our work being dedicated towards, not just our core platform, but things that are genuinely relevant and hot buttons to the community that we'll do on an ongoing basis.
Certainly, and you've definitely been able to make lightning strike twice with FTX games. So I think for those of you that are listening to this who haven't checked it out already, it's theftxgame.com. Definitely go check it out. It will be a very worthwhile use of your time, that's for sure. So I was going through obviously doing a bit of research prior to this episode. I discovered that you were previously the CEO of an augmented reality platform. So I wanted to ask, as the metaverse is this grand concept that we all keep discussing, and it seems like there's going to be a decent amount of development with multiple metaverse platforms, etc., popping up this year. What part do you think augmented reality will play in Web3 and the blockchain space?
That's a great question. I think that experience taught me that there's kind of two almost extreme use cases of augmented reality. I'm speaking very broadly here, but the first is this kind of novelty approach where, here's this cool, interesting, fun thing you can do with augmented reality that takes something out of the ordinary and places it in the scene around you. And that was a very popular production for a variety of clients where they just wanted to find a new way for consumers to engage with the brand, whether that was bringing something to life from a package or an ad campaign or demonstrating some sort of use case in a new and interesting and novel way. And then the other extreme of augmented reality is really pragmatic and practical. It's wayfinding. It's how to explain something very complicated. Scanning a piece of equipment and showing, how to fix something that's broken. So industrial kind of enterprise level use cases. So I think at a very minimal level, I think there's ways of, if you think about digital ownership, taking something that you've earned somewhere, acquired somewhere, and bringing it to life as something that comes to life around you. Like I think Nike recently did something with a sweatshirt drop that when you scan the sweatshirt, it brings to life this whole like winged scene around you. So I think there's ways that augmented reality connects to the real world and assets that you've earned in the metaverse in an interesting and engaging ways. But in some ways it's still kind of a novelty, and I'd say it has more of an entertainment value versus the more like real world practical value.
I've got two questions off the back of that, actually. So you've got a background in advertising and advertising campaigns in various ways. It feels that Web3 is going to represent a tectonic shift for advertising, as much as we're saying blockchain is going to be the big change for gaming. And I've noticed this. I've never worked in advertising per se. I've worked alongside it. I've created content for it, but I've never run campaigns myself. And it's been interesting to watch, even in the last 5-10 years, the change in advertising. And I think one of the best examples of that is Lotus Cars on TikTok. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but essentially it's almost a meme account. It's official, but it's almost a meme account. It's run by this guy who is just superb at the sort of the TikTok algorithm, and it's so strange to see such a prestigious car manufacturer advertising in this way, but it's been so effective, and we've seen the change. And I've often thought that Web3, maybe, I mean, the metaverse, I guess, but Web3 as a whole, I think we could see a real change in advertising. Do you think that's likely?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you already see brands like, certainly Nike has been an early pioneer of how a brand can communicate in the metaverse. You've seen a wide variety of brands enter into metaverse experiences in general. I think in some ways, initially, it's sort of a land grab, making sure that they have a foothold, and advertisers, I think, do a good job of seeing what's on the horizon, and in some cases, recognizing that it's going to be a spend that they don't get a return on the ROI for a while. But I think smart brands figure things out early, like with what Starbucks is doing on the Polygon chain, for example. So I think that proof of attendance with tickets, earning rewards. I mean, it's in a way, it's kind of what we're doing with rewarding fandom, and we see an opportunity for brands to engage with Burn Goes, to run competitions, to recognize who's a super fan and who's knowledgeable about their brand and their history and their legacy, and who's actively supporting the brand, and provide rewarding experiences for them that gives them some tokenized recognition of that, and in some cases an asset that has value.
Yeah, John and I are big fans of Starbucks uses of blockchain, and again, on the topic of Polygon, Reddit did a fantastic job of onboarding people. So it's interesting to see where that's going. On another note, it's related to what you were saying about AR and the metaverse. It's a topic I've written on, but I'm not going to influence your answer. So I'm just going to ask the question outright. How much of a role do you think VR has in the metaverse?
Well, I mean, I think that most of the time when I hear the metaverse, I think VR, like augmented reality, again, I think has it, beyond the novelty aspect, has its best use cases in wayfinding and things that are much more pragmatic. Whereas to truly get a metaverse experience versus something that feels more like a game experience, you've really got to have a headset and be entrenched in an environment that takes you someplace else. And I think that's the future that Facebook and others are counting on as the next evolution of how we interact with digital media. And so, I think that at least for me, when I hear descriptions of the metaverse, I immediately think of a VR application.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've written on a fair few times, because it strikes me that one of the big concerns, which you wouldn't have thought, is that VR could hold the metaverse back, because we haven't seemed to, it's been the next big thing for over a decade at this point, and we haven't quite got it right. Whereas the metaverse is growing so quickly, and they're interacting in this strange way. And a lot of people like Meta have tied up the metaverse with VR intrinsically, and it's as if you can't separate out the two. Do you think one could exist? Well, the metaverse could exist without VR? Yeah.
I think it can, and it does. But I agree with you that I think that the headset issue, when I first started working in augmented reality, and was putting together pitch decks on that, I would sometimes get stopped, and people would say, "Wait a minute. Augmented reality is much smaller. All the buzz is about virtual reality. Augmented reality can't be bigger than the size of the virtual reality market." And I would correct them and say, "You're wrong, because you already have an augmented reality device in your pocket." Whereas the install base of headsets is always going to hold back where people consider, the gateway to the metaverse. And I also have this theory of, like, if something makes you look like an asshole, it's probably not going to succeed, which is like, I don't know if you remember Google Glass, but like, I remember like going to networking events, and if I saw someone, wearing a Google Glass device, it was like, I would just avoid that person like the plague. And, I don't know if you remember, like when the Segway was coming out, it was talked about this technology that was going to transform cities, and sidewalks were going to be redesigned around it, and it was going to eliminate the car. And the reality is, you look like kind of a dork. So like, there's this dork factor. If something makes you look like a dork, it's probably not going to be the next evolution of technology. So I think until Apple has a great way of taking things that sort of linger in obsolescence and making them mainstream, like MP3s. MP3 devices were a thing that was around for many years before Apple really made it a viable business. And the same with, I think it'll be the same with VR devices. I think once Apple releases something that feels as seamless and looks as cool as wearing a pair of sunglasses, I think that's when the medium really takes off.
Yeah. Interestingly, there is, I've worked in the photography industry for a number of years, and there's some glasses with cameras on the moment. They're Ray-Ban sunglasses, and they are good. I've tried them, and they're actually very good. But on the topic of looking like an arsehole, I have an excellent example of that. I bought about 15 years ago, I bought one of the first Google Pixel phones, and it says it comes with a VR headset. And it was like this cardboard,
Yeah.
slightly clothy thing. And I mean, I couldn't have looked more like an arsehole if I tried. And it was the most nauseating 2.5D experience.
It's kind of laggy, and I know exactly the Google Cardboard device. Yeah.
Yeah, it was hot. I felt sick the whole time I was using it. It didn't look remotely realistic. Anyway, John, sorry, I'm holding this interview now.
I showed one of my partners in advertising that device, back when it first came out, and he's a bit of a technophobe, and he said, "I have seen the future, and I hate it."
Yeah, I'm right there with him.
I think even more modern VR headsets still have the same problem. I mean, I've got an Oculus Quest 2, and I'll often have friends around and they'll try out VR for the first time. But the first thing anyone does that's watching this person try VR for the first time is get their phones out and record how silly they look, and then stick those photos and videos everywhere. Well, maybe you don't if you're not.
People get angry, right? They get angry that they were recorded using it, and that's so like that to me is like, at least for the now, a kiss of death, because and I found kind of the same thing, that like, as much as I was an evangelist in immersive media, I own an Oculus, and I once every 3 weeks I look at it and go, I should use that again sometime.
Same. I made a big point at the start of this year that, hey, I was going to get fit. I'm going to play Beat Saber all the time and all these, boxing VR games. And I don't think I've touched it for the last 3 weeks. So I think my New Year's resolution isn't going brilliantly, but hey ho, we'll see by the end of the year.
I try to think of that thing that like makes it break through to something that you have to use every day. And I think that's when something becomes like, when suddenly you wake up and it's like this thing that's part of your, every waking moment to some degree.
Yeah.
It's like, I try to think of what that is for VR. I think it's got to be as seamless as like slipping on a pair of sunglasses, and it makes the world smarter, better, easier to comprehend or navigate, or more fun in a really compelling way, without feeling like you've strapped a TV onto your face.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see the first products in the Web3 space give us that sort of seamless interaction with blockchain technology, which will just kind of allow us to facilitate this, I guess, this, advancement in tech that just tends to happen in the background without you really having to pay attention to it too much. Just on a macro question, me and Rob, we're both Brits. We love our pub quizzes. We love, well, I presume, Rob, you love Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and similar TV game shows and all that kind of thing. I don't know. We've never really talked about it.
20 years ago.
But as a wider question, why do you think we are so captivated by trivia games in particular? And how do you think that Web3 in particular, Burn Ghost, can help bring together fans of different projects, brands and interests to kind of, interact with one another and discuss this trivia?
Well, it's a great question. And when my partner Jason and I were brainstorming about different game mechanics, and we had, many dozens of ideas on things we wanted to focus on, and we kept coming back to trivia and it's interesting because it is the most simplistic kind of game format, right? Like but there's something very appealing in the way that it transcends demographics, it transcends age groups and generations, and it has this instant familiarity and appeal that if you feel like the question is relevant to your knowledge and your experience, it's really kind of hard to resist entering into that. And we looked at things like Sporkle. I don't know if you've ever seen a website called Sporkle, but it's all it is trivia, but the numbers it does is unbelievable. So it kind of felt like that it was an opportunity in Web3 to address this, because again, it's almost going the opposite of the long-term bold vision of a metaverse concept or game towards like the most accessible and familiar, popular, one of the most popular game formats. But also there's a lot of great things about trivia that we recognize that it can. We're talking about rewarding your fandom, or recognizing that you've been a loyal part of the community. It certainly does that. There's certainly ways that even entering into a trivia experience helps educate you as a byproduct. Even when you get it wrong, you're learning something. So if you think about the power of that, if you're a brand or you're an NFT project or any type of community has a trivia experience that's geared towards your audience or your product, there's a great benefit of it that you're rewarding your fans and you're educating everybody else. And so we feel like that has a great connection with Web3 and the challenges in many of those communities. And there's also, we feel like there's this knowledge graph that can be built about a player over time, where the more that you play, the smarter your knowledge graph gets about you and what you're good at. And there can be some really fun and interesting ways we can carve up that data and present it to you, so you get a kind of a snapshot of yourself. And I think if you think about what people find appealing about, I read this story about LinkedIn, and they said that it kind of blew them away that most of what people were doing in the early days was looking at their own profile. Like, people are kind of fascinated with how the world sees them. So as Trivia kind of builds this, and on Burn Ghost, as we build this knowledge graph about you, we think that's going to be compelling for you. And if it becomes compelling for you to share that with the world, you're going to be motivated to make sure that you look pretty good. And the other thing is, Web3, there's, there's ways that you can provide benefits for letting us build that knowledge graph about you that you directly benefit from. So if you can clearly prove that you're knowledgeable and a fan of luxury goods, my bet is that there's brands in the luxury space that would want to provide competitions that you, as a player who's qualified for those competitions, can directly benefit. And that's a distinctly different story and message than, Google and other companies that are gathering data and they're benefiting from that without your sharing in that benefit. We can really make that case in Web3.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've seen a bevy of luxury brands enter the Web3 space already, and I think we're going to see many, many more. We've got the likes of Gucci and Louis Vuitton, etc. right now. And I think those that are not already here are going to want to enter the space in the not too distant future. I think I'm still stuck in that trend by way of looking at my profile all the time. I think I'm definitely 50%.
They had to go and re-engineer it. Like, let's make it easy for them to see how the world is seeing them. So that's why they have that. And I think Facebook too, they have the feature that allows you to view your page as somebody that is looking for you would see it.
Yeah, I spend an inordinate amount of time looking at my online profiles. So.
And they know that.
No, yeah, absolutely. So just going back to the trivia point, kind of the most, the biggest example that comes to mind for me was a terrific trivia game for mobile. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, rather, called HQ Trivia.
Oh yeah.
That had the live game shows, and it was very much kind of a flash in the pan kind of thing. It seemed like the biggest thing in the internet for about 3 months, and then, as I understand, I think they ran out of money or something happened on the back end anyway. But my wider point is, how are you planning for the long term at Burn Ghost?
So trivia is certainly our near-term focus, just because we feel like there's so much opportunity with that hasn't been explored. That really is the focus of I'd say games of knowledge in general is the focus of our near-term roadmap. But longer term, our vision is many flavors of fandom rewarded. So we're not just limited to trivia as the focus of that. There's certainly a wide variety of games that we feel like can be reskinned around different brands, IPs, and NFT projects. And then longer term beyond that, we feel like our focus is more broadly about winning. Like, how can we make tools and a platform that make it easy for any brand, IP, or project in the Web3 space and beyond to spin up opportunities to reward fandom and provide prizing.
That's interesting. There's one area that I don't think Web3 has really touched yet, or at least I haven't seen it touch, and that's digital and online learning. It seems like there'd be a good overlap there. I use Duolingo every day and have done for a couple of years, and really, that's just a quiz game. It's just a guided quiz game.
Yeah.
It seems like it could be there.
Yeah, absolutely. We've already talked to partners who are onboarding game projects onto their chains and are interested in creating widgetized version of our experience that they can plug into each of their new game companies as they come aboard to spin up competitions to reward people for taking the time to learn about those projects. Even if you spent any time on Coinbase, they have Coinbase features where, if you take 10 minutes to read about a new chain or token, they then quiz you afterwards, and you earn those tokens as a reward for taking that time to educate yourself. So we absolutely see having an SDK that can be plugged in to help educate consumers about different projects or brands in that way. So yeah, we think trivia is very powerful that way.
Yeah. So the one other question I have on that front is, you mentioned there's other games. So trivia is the near term, and then you're going to be looking at other games. Presumably they're all in the same sort of region of the casual, easy to play games. Can you give us some examples of the sort of genres you might be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, if you think broadly about, really, we think that once we are deeper into the tool set for how you handle prizing, that really we want to make it accessible for any game developer to take our tools and plug them into their game to make it easier to provide prizing and win. But I'd say in the more near term for us, we have variations on different knowledge based games. We have like dimensional kind of breakout games. Even the FTX game as an endless runner can be reskinned with different brands and IPs to make that sort of a customized experience. So I'd say broadly, any kind of simple casual game is potentially in our roadmap.
Speaking of casual games, of course the FTX game is an interesting experience. Just to touch back on that again, but of course that went viral in the Web3 community. So how are you going to plan on making Burn Ghost go viral?
Another great question. So that's where we feel like our partnerships and working with NFT projects and working with them so that they can point to Burn Ghost competitions as part of their roadmap and motivating those communities to come and play for those prizes on our platform, but also to take our experience and widgetize in a way that can be plugged into communities where they live is an important part of our roadmap as well. So you won't just be experiencing Burn Ghost at our destination site. It might appear as a powered by experience that lives in the community where those players live. But in general, motivating people to come play on our platform based on the prizes that are interesting and appealing to them is a core part of how we feel that we'll acquire users.
Interesting. I just realized that I don't know the answer to a pretty fundamental question, so perhaps the listeners don't as well. When is Burn Ghost going to be live, per se? Like, when's your first launch?
So we're looking at NFT NYC as sort of our launch event. So we're actually finalizing plans for a space for a launch party, and we'll launch our open playable version just prior to that event, but sort of not lined up nicely to when we were planning it anyway was an April launch. So the fact that we have this event that we can use to kind of kick it off and get some attention there, that's our plan.
Cool, nice. Fantastic. Well, I'll be in attendance at NFT NYC, so we'll have to meet up sometime. Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Yeah.
So speaking of events, very quickly, obviously we've got NFT NYC coming up. I think NFT Paris is in a week or two. There's obviously some massive gaming events later on in the year as well. But of course, NFT NYC is very much an event for the NFT community, for Web3, whereas Burn Ghost seems like the game that will apply to a mainstream audience or to the wider world. So are you planning on going to any kind of traditional events in that sense to bridge that gap into a traditional audience, or are you looking at traditional marketing channels for that sort of thing? What's your plan there?
Not at first. I think, our plan for the next, probably for 2023 is really focused on the Web3 audience. I mean, ironically, when my partner Jason and I were first brainstorming this idea, it was very firmly a Web 2 concept, and it wasn't a blockchain concept that we were focused on as the fundamental audience that we were appealing to. So we think that it actually made a lot of sense when we started to think about the concept applied towards a crypto native audience. And there's a lot of smart reasons that we chose to go in this direction, but we think that there is a vision for Burn Ghost that goes well beyond Web3 when you think about the broad appeal and opportunity with fandom rewarded. And going way back, our original concept had this idea of Burn Ghost as a two-sided marketplace. So we think that over time there's ways that not only can partner projects, communities, brands leverage Burn Ghost and our technology, but if you own an asset, Burn Ghost might be a place that you take it and spin up a competition on your own to run a competition against it and make more money on Burn Ghost than you might selling it on eBay or elsewhere. So that's kind of our longer term vision, but we really see that as like a phase 2 versus a real focus on the crypto audience and crypto natives for the next, at least 6 to 8 months.
Cool. Well, hey, Burn Ghost will become first available at NFT NYC. I think we'll probably wrap things up there, Steve. Is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners before we wrap it up?
No, just look forward to having you engage with. We can't wait because we're pretty excited about how it looks and the how it plays, and love to have you in our Discord and follow us on Twitter at Burn Ghost Games, and look forward to having you play.
Fantastic. Well, hey, I'll look forward to meeting you at NFT NYC.
Likewise. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
There we go. Thank you very much to Steve Curran from Burn Ghost Games for that interview. We touched on a lot of different topics there. AR, trivia, the FTX game, which again, it's hilarious. Go check it out.
Very funny, yeah.
The concept of going viral, events that we're attending. But something that I wanted to touch on, Rob, is we've never talked about this on the pod before. You mentioned you use Duolingo on a daily basis. So naturally, that leads me to the question, you must know more than just the English language. So take it away, Rob, with whatever language it is.
Wow. If I tried, I'd get the hot sweats. But what I can show you is that I am currently approaching. I'll show you.
Here we go.
I'll show you live. Come on, Duolingo. Here we go.
If this wasn't an incentive for those listening on Apple and Spotify to go to YouTube, I don't know what.
Yeah, this is terrible listening. I'm currently approaching 1,000 days.
Oh, wow. That's
mirrored.
Incredible.
You can't read that even slightly. So even don't bother going to YouTube. It wasn't worth it.
I'll see what I can do in post. Also, I wanted to mention, I wonder if anyone spotted the change in the video at around the 10-minute mark.
Yeah. If I seemed like I was having a health issue for the first 10 minutes of that podcast, I must have seemed vacant and flustered because my headphones, which I thought were fine again, were not. And it was just cutting out. It was crackly. And then it didn't sound like a headphone problem. It sounded like the internet. So I was shutting everything. I left the call, rejoined the call. I was trying my very best to resolve that. But it was the headphones. So I'm going to ritualistically burn them. And I'm going to replace this because the hidden mic is just winding me up. But yes.
Those headphones that you haven't been able to use for about 10, 12 episodes at this point.
Yeah, I know. I thought I'd fixed it because I bought a new Bluetooth dongle, which I didn't need. And I think it was struggling to pair. So it will now die a fiery death.
Oh, that makes sense.
As it should.
Well, hey, there we go. Episode 57 this week, not last week, of the Mint One podcast is in the books. And once again, thank you very much for Steve for taking the time to speak with us. I'm looking forward to seeing the launch of Burn Games, catching up with them in New York, getting to see how...
Yeah, well, you might be able to slip into that event. I might have to fly over.
We'll see. Oh, and NFT NYC is going to be so ridiculously busy this year, but we'll see how it goes. Rob, outro time. Where can we find you?
Okay, we're labelling it live now. This is the outro. You can find me at tokengamer.io for daily blockchain gaming news. Our app, which is Token Gamer on the App Store, Android and iOS, where you can find your Wax account stats, NFT stats, all details like that. And we're integrating Polygon. It's currently in testing, so that's going to be cool. Then you can find us at Token Gamer News on Twitter, Token Gamer on YouTube. We have got more video content coming, finally. Waxaccount.com for in-depth wax analytics. Oh, that would do. No one's listening anymore. John, over to you.
Yeah, so NFTinsider.io for the latest NFT, Web3, blockchain gaming news daily, or trying to be daily. Done 2 articles a day this week. Crazy. Anyway,
nice.
And then on socials, at NFTinsider_IO. For me personally, it's at Hydropowered, HYDROPWRD, and have a brand new profile picture. There we go. Had to find a way to drop the Cool Cats mention into the app. I'm wearing my Cool Cat sweater that I got from New York. And as I was saying to you before the pod, I think I bought at around about the right time. Bought my quite rare Cool Cat for just over 2 ETH a week ago, and now I think the floor price is just under 3. So, hey, quids in. Not that I'm going to gains. Not that I'm going to sell or trade it, because I've wanted a Cool Cat for a long time. But anyway, that's everywhere where you can find me. And something that I should mention is the Beast Kingdom drop on the Atomic Hub launchpad on March 1st. Go follow the Atomic Hub socials for that. It's cool to see more phygital NFT drops on the Wax chain. So yeah, you've got your Funkos, you've got your Ultramans, and there's going to be more coming. A bit of alpha for those of you listening to the pod, but there we go. Cool. Anything to add, Rob, or am I good to do the spiel that takes us off this?
No. Play us out, John.
Play us out. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, or listening. If you're on Spotify or Apple, speaking of which, 5-star podcast review would be fantastic, and on YouTube, a subscribe would be brilliant as well. Hit that bell icon so you're notified as soon as the latest episode goes live, and leave a comment on what you'd like us to talk about next. Who'd you like us to interview next? We've got a number of interviews coming up in the next few weeks with some interesting figures in Web3, blockchain gaming, all that good stuff. So yeah, be sure to subscribe, follow, all that good stuff to get that as soon as it goes live. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we will not see you. You will tune in again next week.
We
hope you tune in again.
Tune in again next week.
We hope you tune in again next week.